Good afternoon, everybody. I am David Safransky, your host of Financial Revelations, a podcast about money, politics, life, sanity, all of things which we're going to talk about today, especially the sanity part, because we are living in a slightly insane time. I think everybody would agree. And if it looks like I'm petting a dog today, it's because I am petting a dog today. It's bring your dog to work 3 months for me, because my wife is in Vero Beach with the other dog, and so I can't keep her at home for 10 hours and not expect to find a big mess. So I bring her to work with me, and she's a great dog. She's going to be a therapy dog someday. I'm pretty sure of it. Yesterday, somebody was in the office, and Pixie just kind of saddled up next to her and laid her head on her lap and stayed there for an hour. And so she's a good dog, but I am petting a dog. You can reach me on Twitter at SkiBucks1. You can email Corey at epsf.com. You can call us, 1-800-344-2534. You can hear me on WCRF. This morning, we shaved Brian's beard on air because somebody gave a big donation to their fundraiser last week. And it wasn't as bad as I thought. I got to admit, he actually looked pretty good. So I'm glad for him because it takes him a while to grow a beard. We're also having a workshop that I want you to come to in Elyria, Ohio. If you've never gone to Elyria before, well, it's not a great place, but it's not a horrible place. It's where my church is at. We're going to do it at the church. Got room for about 100 people. Space is filling up. A lot of people are calling, so $15 a person. 100% of the money goes to charity. And we'll have some coffee and refreshments there, water and such, and some snacks. You know, we're not going to feed you dinner. I did read in the Wall Street Journal last week that people are foregoing buying deodorant because it's so expensive. So I've instructed Corey and Alyssa to smell everyone's armpit on the way in. And if you stink, you can't come in. So make sure, even if you got to borrow deodorant from somebody, wear deodorant. There's one thing that I hope people don't scrimp on, and that is deodorant and toilet paper. When I was in the Army, we were out in the field, and we forgot to bring toilet paper with us. And one of the guys, he must have eaten Taco Bell right before he went because he was in a bad way. And his T-shirt kept getting progressively shorter because he was cutting off strips of his shirt. You know, well, that is going to be Workshop Tuesday, April 16th, 6 p.m., Elyria, Ohio, managing your money in an election. 100% goes to the Amazon Fund. We're going to the Amazon. We're helping several people that are going because they're pastors or they're members of the leadership team in a church, and we'd like to help them as much as we can to the point of even paying their way. And if you want to go, probably this trip isn't going to happen for you. It's a little bit late in the game, but we're going next year too. So if you want to go on a short-term missions trip, be back within 11 or 12 days. Stay in contact because we have a Starlink with us. So you can stay in contact with home if you need to. You can go with us. We want to take people. We want to take churches. We want to see your church organize a trip. It's incredible what you will see there. It's incredible what you will experience there. Giving people fresh water to drink that have never had fresh water before. Delivering the gospel, putting missionaries in the village. Putting a muddy footprint in the bank of a river that perhaps less than 0.5% of all humankind has ever seen. It's very humbling. It's a very humbling experience. Well, there was a Fed meeting. Let's move on. There's a Fed meeting yesterday. It concluded yesterday. The Fed meetings, incidentally, just to give you a little wonky background knowledge, always on a Tuesday, Wednesday. The full committee meets in person. There's always a statement issued by the Fed at 2 p.m. on Wednesday. There's a press conference by the Fed chairman on Wednesday. And who's the Fed chairman? Chair Powell! That's who the Fed chairman is. I do that with his name because in his first press conference, there was a reporter, and they do ask after he gives a statement, they do open it up for questions by the press. Most of the questions are good. They're pretty good. Some are pretty dumb. I remember one time, and I'm going to get back to why I do that, but I remember one time in the Gulf War, General Schwarzkopf would give a briefing every day. And reporters would stand up in the background and say, well, when's your next big attack going to happen? He would just laugh at him. Like, are you guys that dumb, really, that you think I'm going to... They would just... Could you give us your battle plans? What's your biggest weakness as a unit right now? Like, well, General Schwarzkopf kind of got it, and he would mock them. And it was very, very funny to watch these. Even Saturday Night Live. I don't remember the last time Saturday Night Live was funny. It isn't funny. The Weekend Update's kind of funny. But that was funny. Kevin Nealon was one of the reporters asking, like, what's your battle plans? Very funny. But anyway, in Chair Powell's first press conference as Fed chairman, there's a reporter, I don't even remember who he's from. I didn't see him yesterday, but he kind of has a little bit of a tickish behavior about him. He kind of blinks his eyes a lot, and he's very staccato in his talk, and he said, Chair Powell! Like that, kind of just, I don't know, he was just nervous, and I thought, and I rewound it, and I watched it again. Chair Powell! And I thought, that's mine, I own it, and so I've adapted it somewhat. We call that poetic license. I don't know. Well, what did Chair Powell say yesterday? He said that 3 cuts are on the table for this year. I think that it's going to be tough to get to 3 cuts this year, but they could do it, and I'm going to tell you how they do it. So the data coming out so far this year, it's the end of March. Easter is Good Friday's next week, so we're going to end the first quarter next week. The data has been horrible for the Fed to cut rates on. It just could not cut rates on this data if it continued. In fact, given the data that we have, they'd be more likely to raise rates in the data from the last 3 months, more likely to raise rates than to cut rates. And that's really troubling because when we're coming into the December last year, I thought that they missed a golden opportunity to kind of put a nail in the coffin of inflation. I don't know if it would have done it or not, but I was calling for one more rate hike. I think they should have done it. They missed that opportunity. And so we get into January, hot data. February, hot data. March, hot data. If you get April, hot data, I don't think they're going to raise rates. I think he was pretty resolute that he felt like they were at the height of the rates for this cycle. But if the data gets even hotter, I don't think they're going to have to raise rates if the data gets even hotter. Now, in the past, I was reading this yesterday, in the past, in the 70s, we computed Consumer Price Index, we call it the CPI, including mortgage payments and rent payments. And if we did that now, which we don't do that, we took that out. And those things aren't really that volatile. Those things tend to be long-term changes. But when you're raising rates, that is inflationary, and that does increase your payments. If we did that now, inflation would be at 5.9%. So when people say, well, yeah, you're telling me inflation's coming down, but it still feels really expensive. That's because it is really expensive. I was at the grocery store last night. It's like the first time in 3 weeks I've gone to the grocery store. My wife came home for a couple of days. She said, well, I'm going to go to the grocery store for you. I just don't like going. I don't. So I go and get things when I need them. I bought like 6 things. It was $67. If you're living on the economic margins, if you were just kind of making ends meet before, you're not making ends meet now because prices have risen this much and your wages have risen this much. And that difference between this and this is loss. That's loss of purchasing power. And that's exactly what's happened and is happening. So they're saying we're coming into last year. We're coming into this year from December, and they're saying, well, there's going to be 7 rate cuts. That's what the market was thinking. I never thought that. I never thought that. I thought maybe 2. And I still think that. I think there might be 2 rate cuts. And the way they get to it is they say, well, if this bump in these inflation numbers in the first 3 months subsides, and it's just a bump, and that is possible. I'm going to talk a little bit of politics today. But I am a realist. The numbers do get a little wonky and they can get bumped around by a few things, and that is possible, but it feels to me like it just got really sticky. So we were at 9% last year, and yes, the rate of growth in inflation has dropped, but it's cumulative. So the 9% is still there. Inflation hasn't fallen. It's still rising. It's just rising at a slower pace. So it's painful. I get that. They could, if the rise in inflation does get way closer to 2%, they could say, well, based on this, the rate that we're at right now is very restrictive. We can bring it down a little bit. So they could get there. We're just going to have to wait and see. It feels to me like inflation is accelerating. Fuel prices are back up. Natural gas is low. That's true. Natural gas is very low, but oil is not. And that has an impact on a lot of things. Everything you do, if you're picking up a strawberry at the grocery store, it got there on a truck, from a train, from a boat, from a plane, fuel prices affect those prices. And you go to the grocery store and it's painful right now. So you want the pain to end? Do you want the pain to end? I want the pain to end. Vote. Vote, for heaven's sakes. We just had a primary in Ohio. People watch this from all over the world, actually. Corey gets these reports from, they don't tell you who's watching, they tell you where they're watching from. And it's not just in the United States. So I really appreciate you guys watching. I love the feedback. We have some feedback today, a question from somebody who watches. But how do you vote? We want to vote away from things like malicious prosecution, the unending spending, which is both parties. There's no doubt about that. But we have spent so much money since the end of COVID. The Build Back Better. Nothing's built, nothing's better, and nothing's back. We have a problem with illegal immigration. It's problematic. And no country should have to endure this. Did you know that the Biden administration flew in? They went and got 320,000 plus illegal immigrants and flew them here to avoid chaos at the border. They just flew in 320,000 plus illegal immigrants. So tell me now it's not a plan. I wouldn't believe you anyway. This is a plan. What's the plan? Some of it has to do with congressional seats, because when they do the census, when they count people in the census, they just count people. They don't count illegal versus legal immigrants or people who are here legally. Like, I'm here legally. I was born here. I'm an American. If you're from Guatemala and you snuck in the country, you still get counted. I don't want to pick on Guatemala, but a lot of people are coming from Guatemala, but they're coming from China. They're coming from Pakistan and India. They're coming from Iran. They're coming from the Palestinian state. There's Hamas members that are getting caught here. So rule of law. We got to have a rule of law. We're a country of rules. We have laws. This ludicrous ideology that's going on right now with our kids, I call it a radical left agenda. You want to save our families. This is how we're going to vote. Did you know that the vice president, I'm not even going to say her name, the vice president of the United States gave a press conference in an abortion clinic? That's their platform. They have abortion is their platform. This is horrible. And really, this is about money, too, because this all affects. The inflation happened because of the stupidity of the Biden administration and their inability to deduce policy. They didn't realize that if you dump $6 trillion into a constricted economy, it's going to cause inflation and make it significantly worse. And that's what's happened. So that's why people are mad. You know, you talk to Hispanic families, they don't love illegal immigration. I don't know why the Biden administration would think they would. The people who are here legally, who have waited in line, maybe, and I know people that, a friend of mine at church just got his citizenship, came here legally, did the things that you're supposed to do. These are the things that we're voting against. Now, you may not like Donald Trump as your candidate. You may say he has mean tweets. I want you to grow a set already, okay? And stop being such a baby. It's not about mean tweets, for heaven's sakes. This is about our country, saving what we have strived so hard to build. And we're giving it away. We're shipping crates of cash to Iran. This is what the Biden administration is doing. That's why Hamas had money to go into Israel. That's where they get their money from. None of that's free. That's where they get their money to build tunnels and buy missiles and things like that. None of it's free. It all costs money. And we gave it to them. And we're continuing to give it to them. Iran was broke when Donald Trump was president. He may not be your favorite person. I'm asking you, as a real American, to hold your nose and do what's right and vote for Donald Trump. We've never had a perfect president. We never will have a perfect president. There was only one perfect person who walked on this earth, ever. And that's who we're striving for. Is Donald Trump a perfect person? No, he's not. The military loved him. My taxes loved him. The market loved him. Businesses loved him. This is not a zero-sum game. It's not just, rich people get richer and nobody else makes money. No. It kind of flows. Trickle-down economics was real. Art Laffer was real. He's a real person. He's on Fox Business almost daily. He designed the Laffer curve. It's who it's named after. A genius. He's been in economics his entire life. And when companies do better, when people at the top do better, everybody does better. Everybody does better. There were more jobs, more full-time employment under Donald Trump. That's what I'm asking you to do. Vote for sanity. Vote for Bernie Moreno. Vote for DJ Swearinger if you live in Erie County area. Vote for Donald Trump. Vote. Ohio's going to go Republican. I'm pretty sure of that because we're sensible people and we have voter ID checks here. So just a question from a listener about beneficiary IRAs. If you're the beneficiary of an IRA or any qualified money like that, pre-tax, tax deferred, you have to open up a beneficiary IRA. That's where the money goes into. The money has to be out within 10 years. That's part of the Trump tax cuts. It wasn't my favorite part. In fact, I don't like it because for a spouse, the rules for a spouse before were if your spouse assumed room temperature, their IRA could just go right into your IRA. There was no beneficiary IRA for a spouse. That is no longer true. Even a spouse has to have a beneficiary IRA. And I don't think that that's right. I think that part of the tax code should be amended. It may be for spouses, but for family members, for down the line, if you weren't a spouse, you always had to do a beneficiary IRA. The rules were a little bit different because you could stretch it out for a long time. Now you got 10 years to get the money out. That's it. You could take the money out all in 1 year or in 2 or 3 years, but it's got to be out by 10 years. And so it could affect your taxes depending on the amount of money that's in that IRA. Most people choose not to take it out all in 1 year if it's a larger amount because you will pay more in taxes because you're lumping so much money into 1 year. So you don't have to do it. It's a good time to talk to a CPA. I think everybody should talk to a CPA at least once. Have them do your taxes and then replicate that if it's not complicated. If you own a business, LLCs, you have rental properties, anything like that, I think you should use a CPA. I think it's wise. So there's no more stretch out IRA possible. I am David Safransky, a real American, a true red-blooded patriot, and that's true, and the voice you can trust.